Hello. In this unit, we will be talking about the framework for ELT in secondary education. To do so, I will refer to the view of language, the view of learning, and the view of language acquisition that we will follow. In this presentation, I'm going to focus on the first of these issues. What is our view of language when we are teaching young people in secondary education? Well, the view of language that we will adopt is that of critical discourse analysis. According to Rogers, discourse can be understood as a multimodal social practice. It reflects and constructs the social world through many different sign systems. Because systems of meaning are caught up in political, social, racial, economic, religious, and cultural formations which are linked to socially defined practices that carry more or less privilege and value in society, they cannot be considered neutral. So adopting a critical discourse analysis requires to understand a broad framework that brings critical social theories into dialogue with theories of language. We are concerned with a critical theory of the social world. We are establishing a relationship of discourse in the construction and representation of the social world. This perspective will help us describe, interpret, and explain the relationships between language and the social world. Let us work now on this reflection task. Go through the text. You may stop the video for a minute to read the text in detail and try answering the following questions. 1. What representation of the social world does the text show? What do we know about the people in the story? What do we know about them in terms of age, gender, social background, religion, ethnicity, cultural background, educational background? 3. What semiotic systems are combined to make meaning? 4. How is language used to carry out social practices? These questions illustrate the ways in which we look at texts when we are working from a critical discourse analysis. They are an anticipation of the type of analysis that we will have to carry out to select texts for secondary education. So now let's analyze the concept of critical discourse analysis in detail. Why critical? Well, the notion of critical refers to power as being a central concept in critical discourse analysis. To see and describe the nature of power, critical discourse analysis uses critical social theory as a theoretical foundation. So what is critical social theory? Well, it's a knowledge base structured by two agendas. The first one is that critiquing and resisting domination is crucial. And the second one is that creating a society free of oppression is necessary. Critical social theory is a transdisciplinary knowledge base, which means that several different disciplines constitute its knowledge. The intellectual heritage of critical social theory draws on philosophy, literature, legal scholarship, cultural studies, critical race scholarship, political economy studies, ethnic studies, and feminist studies, among others, and it has been influenced by the Frankfurt School and the British Cultural Studies School. At the heart of critical social theory is a commitment to work with heart, says Rogers, head and hands. The work in our heads consists of wrestling with the contradictions that are inevitably a part of our daily existence, considering problems with an open sociological mind, and dreaming of alternative realities. It is a critical approach because it implies recognizing and identifying social struggles, historical and contemporary natures of context, conditions and struggles. It is also critical because it engages in critique and building alternative realities, that is, in critically examining what is going on. But it doesn't end there. It also means generating alternative worlds, since the end goal is to hope, to dream, and to create alternative realities. This is the generative side of the critical project, that is, to forge alternative ways of representing, of being, of interacting with the world. Let's go back to the example. Let us now analyze this task. What historical and contemporary contexts, conditions and struggles can you recognize and identify in the text? How does it encourage you to critically examine the situation and think of other possibilities? Does it allow to forge alternative ways of representing, being and interacting in the world? Go through the text. You may want to stop the video for a minute and try answering these questions. Through your answers, you must have realized the critical appraisal of the text. Also, the text is a very good example of what Rogers calls discourse. She says that people seek to make meaning with every aspect of who they are and what they are doing, how they use their bodies, integrate objects, artifacts and technology, use gestures, time and space, adjust their tone of voice when they speak, choose the words they use, and interact in particular ways with others. Thus, meanings are made through representational systems, language being just one of the sign systems people use to create meanings. Meanings are always embedded within social, historical, political, and ideological contexts, and meanings are motivated. When people call on representational systems, such as images, gestures, or words, they intend to accomplish something, build relationships, knowledge, identities, and worldviews. Back in our example, let's now list at least 6 different meanings, one per frame, that are conveyed in the comic. Consider there are many different meanings at different levels. What identities, realities, worldviews are conveyed? The ways in which we are exploring the text through different questions shows us the different ways in which we can carry out the analysis in critical discourse analysis. There are different approaches to critical discourse analysis. Some perspectives are more textually oriented than others. Some are more focused on the linguistic, whereas others are more focused on the contextual. Some work at a macro level, whereas others work on the impact of global issues on local discourses. What is important to note is that we will work with 3 foundational perspectives in this course. These 3 perspectives are James G's approach, who has worked with the notion of discourse with a small d versus discourse with a big D. Norman Fairclough, who has consistently worked with the question of mediation between the textual and the social world, and Gunther Kress, who has worked on the cultural and media studies on his idea that ideology could be found in many forms of representation, not just language. These 3 perspectives we will analyze in depth in future classes. Why is it that a critical discourse analysis is of relevance in secondary education? Well, critical discourse analysis is useful to analyze the ways in which texts talk and other semiotic interactions are constructed across time and contexts, being schools a very important contextual place. Critical discourse analysis also provides a particular way of conceptualizing interactions that take place in the world. And also, it provides the tools for addressing the complexity of movement across educational sites, practices, and systems in a world where inequalities are global in scope. In this presentation, I have talked about critical discourse analysis as the basis for the ways in which we look at language in secondary school education. In future lessons, we will analyze in depth the three foundational perspectives that we have described in brief in this class.